A blank canvas can be a very scary thing, right? Especially if it's a large one like this one or a huge one like the one I have behind me. So, to overcome that fear together, today I'm going to share with you 3 ideas on how we can paint these. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Paula. Happy to have you here. And because I do have 3 large canvas, I think we should get started.
To start today's paintings, I'm bringing out my silicone tray and cup from the Nerdy Crafters pouring kit. All the tools she included I have used again, so I'm very happy about that. For most of these paintings, I'm going to use my apple barrel craft paints because my objective of sharing my art journey and creating videos like this is simply to inspire you to create what you want, releasing limitations like the quality of the medium you have. I started by pouring out a lot of white, but I didn't have enough, so I had to use whatever I had left of this tub of acrylic paint too. And it appears to be almost empty too, so I scraped out what I could. I then continued to add more of my regular craft paint and mix it in. I used orange, brown, and yellow because I was trying to create a neutral tan color for the background. I kept mixing my colors, adding black, brown, and gray too, until I got the shade that I wanted, and here comes the first canvas. I wet it all with my spray bottle first, and then I just added my background color that I just mixed. Once I covered it all, I wanted to mix a second color because I was thinking of a muted dark turquoise. I'm going to use the same cup and whatever is left there, add blue to the color, and also I'm adding this weird color that I had left from the pouring kit video. If you haven't seen that video, here it is, check it out. I'm also adding black again. I mixed the color until I had it where I wanted it, and here is where the fun starts. I'm just gonna paint stripes. Plain, simple, easy. And I do have to apologize about this footage. The autofocus betrayed me. You can kind of see me in the background. I'm just painting random stripes where I feel like and adding sprays of water. Very simple, just fun and intuitive. I had a lot of paint left over, so I decided to cover that with another cup to save it, and we'll see if I can use it later. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my second color. I'm taking my painting onto the floor because I want my paint to be super liquid, but I don't want to have drips pouring down my canvas with this color. Now I'm using black, straight out of the bottle, again, just craft paint. I have this wedge I want to play with, but you could also use a plastic credit card if you want to do something similar. So I'm just dropping paint wherever I feel like it and pulling it down with my different tools as I want to. I want you to remember my videos are not tutorials. I make them as inspiration starters for you. So you could use any colors or techniques you want. I just want to take you in this journey with me so you can see it's not as scary and literally anything can work. Simple lines with not much plan can become beautiful wall art. In this spirit, I continue to add black everywhere I wanted to, and again, I let it dry. With the black done and ready, I'm going to go in with a third color, again straight out of the craft paint bottle, and I'm using white. What I'm doing is giving all of my lines different textures or characteristics by playing with them, spraying them with water, pulling the paint in different ways. Here's how it looks all dried up. I'm putting it up on the easel so you can take a better look and see this could be the finished painting. Done. And let me show you with a mock-up how it would look with a simple frame in a home setting. See? Now that's done, but I got the impulse to add a little extra something something, and since I had some of this golden acrylics bronze paint left over, I thought I'd put it on top just to show you an alternative if you want to keep playing. I really like how this metallic paint separates into turquoise and green hues if you add a lot of water to it, so I thought it would be fitting for this composition. Again, just doing lines, playing with the amount of water I had, and I was done. While this final step dries, I thought I'd jump into our second piece of the day using the same paint I had in my hand, giving it the first background layer. And now I can go back to the first one, which is now dry and ready for a second mock-up. If you want to stick to the end of the video, I'll hang all 3 paintings on an actual wall so you can appreciate them differently. Anyhow, I'm going to try to recreate a negative painting technique we used in previous sketchbook videos that everybody likes on this second canvas. I've never done it on canvas, so I thought it was worth the try. Here's my painted canvas. I gave it 2 layers of that bronze paint, and I printed and cut some heart templates to make drawing many perfect hearts easier on me. I drew my first layer of hearts, and remember that paint I had left over? I chose to use it, but I added a lot of black to make it much darker. The first step is to use this color very watered down, trying to mimic watercolors here, and to paint around all of the hearts I drew. The first layer took me about an hour and a half to paint. It was a super long process, and I think this was because it's a really large area. These canvases are 36 by 36 inch each in the metric system. For the ones who use the metric system like I do, it's 90 by 90 centimeters, so almost a square meter. They're big. But as you move forward with the layers painting around the hearts, it takes less and less time since you're painting less negative space. And as I'm painting on the floor, look who's resting on my desk again. I don't know what her deal is lately. She has a perfectly soft pad on the floor, but she prefers to climb on the desk. Anyhow, this is how the first layer looks. Horrible. But I decided to trust the process just like I did in my sketchbook when I tried this technique for the first time. Now it's dried, so I went in to draw a second layer of hearts. And of course, part of the trick of this technique is that every new heart that you draw has to be behind the ones that are already on your surface. Again, once I drew all of my hearts, I just painted a very watered down layer of dark paint around each of them, and of course around the first heart as well. You don't want to cover any of the hearts. And the second layer is horrible too, but as I said before, we are just trusting the process today. Now, at this point, when the second layer had dried, I thought maybe the painting would end up looking nicer if it was a little bit more metallic. So I grabbed these 2 golden acrylics, mixed them together, and covered the whole painting with a layer of gold paint again. I watered it down like crazy, so I did have to blot out some of the turquoise water from the hearts that were in the front. Here's how it dried, a little bit more green now, and you can still see both layers I already painted. Not super crisp, but I liked it, so I carried on to the third layer of hearts. And because I had done this on my sketchbook before, I was confident it would work. So I drew the third layer of hearts, and of course, after I drew them, I painted around them with my darker paint. I chose to move the painting up to my easel to draw the fourth layer of heart because I wanted to keep an eye on my composition, and it's easier to do that upright. This perspective really helps on making your paint more cohesive or coherent and to get the results you want. So I drew all of the hearts and then put my painting back onto the floor so I could once again use the watered down acrylic to paint around all of the hearts. Instead of drawing a fifth layer of hearts, I chose to give the entire painting another layer of dark paint around all of the hearts that were under already, just to give it more depth. And I actually did this layer on my pajamas the next day, first thing in the morning, because I wanted to allow the painting extra drying time while I showered and got ready for the day. As a last step, when that layer was dried and ready after I showered, I put the painting back onto the easel to go around everything with the same color, but this time I didn't water it down. I wanted it to be darker and deeper, and because it wasn't watered down, I was able to use it upright without the fear of the paint dripping and ruining the hearts that were already there. I finished it, and as you can see up close, the hearts are not perfect or crisp, but I really like the results. I love how this heart painting turned out, especially because if you know me, you know I love hearts. I'm crazy for them. And of course, a little mock-up for you to see, and I will show you all of these paintings on an actual wall at the end of the video, don't worry. In the meantime, it was time to move to the third and final painting of the day. Well, not actually the day, because this took me weeks, as you can probably tell from my various outfit changes, but the last idea of this video. For this one, I also wanted to recreate something I did in my sketchbook, and it's the circles with the neurographical circles on top. Just like the sketchbook page, I want a white background, but not plain white. So the first thing I do is create a mixture of teal and black to cover the whole canvas. I don't care about the stripes or it being even, since this is just my first base color that I'm gonna build up on. It's kind of embarrassing to admit that since I started this and I saw the empty white jars, it's been over 2 weeks and I still have not gone out to buy any more white paint. So for the next layer, I'm going to have to use whatever is left on this container. Luckily, it was enough to create the second layer, and then I also added water to the almost empty container and a little yellow, gave it a good shake, and used the super watered down color to paint on the floor the third layer for the background. As this layer dried, I did have to go out to get some more white paint to finish it off, and because the closest store to me is not an art store but a hardware store, I went there. They do have a little aisle of art supplies in there. It's mostly spray paints and a little bit of cheap acrylic paints, but it was enough for me. Oh, and I also saw these boxes, so I bought one because my friend Rose shared a random color challenge in which she tagged me to try it out. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna paint a wooden box with random colors. So expect that video soonish. Okay, back home, and I'm gonna use the white cheap paint I bought and a sponge. I love painting large areas with a sponge. It's fast, it gives you a nice even finish, and you use less paint. It's just very satisfying to do. And okay, so with that last layer of background dried, now we have the new white background to work with, and I was ready to draw some circles. I started drawing them with my grade school compass, which doesn't really open that much, so I used the large plate also to draw some of the larger circles. You can't really see the pencil drawn circles on camera, so let's just jump to the footage of me starting to paint the first circle. I wanted to use some fluid acrylics that I have and that I have neglected for months, so I started with those. To try to make the paint move more like watercolor, I used my spray bottle on top of the paint, but this just moved the paint outside of the circle, so I decided that was not a good idea and it was not the best way to saturate the paint with water. The good thing about this technique I used in the background is that you can just clean the acrylic that you don't want under with a wet wipe if it's still a little bit wet, and it won't stain because you already created this plasticky background from all the layers. Moved on to my second circle and still playing with the acrylics. Now, these colors were looking a little too bright for me, for the idea I had in mind or for the page I was recreating. So I added my black craft paint just using a bunch of water, and that amount of water made it act exactly as the fluid paints had, like watercolors. So technically you could use all craft paint for this painting too. The reason I'm recreating ideas from the sketchbook videos on Canvas today is because I see many questions on those videos on how to make the pages into large art. And the two ways I suggest is either scanning and reproducing, i.e. printing whatever image in whatever size you want, or paint it larger, which might seem a little more intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. Once I was happy with all of my circles, I thought I'd let it dry for an hour and see what happened. And an hour later, the green was still super wet and I had some other wet areas, so I just had to leave it to dry overnight. Next day, I took the painting up to my desk now. I knew I still needed to paint flat because of the type of paint I got, but my bag needed a break, so I just put it up on my desk. I started to draw circles again with my compass, and again I needed to bring in some household items to create the size of circles I needed. Here's a better shot for you to see all of the circles I drew. Oh, about the paint. The day before at the hardware store, I got excited and I also bought this black paint that's actually for walls, thinking it would be glossier and the black lines would have a different texture and shine, and that would be awesome. So that's why I'm using this. And once I took the paint out, I stained the background of my canvas again, but wet wipe, and I cleaned it. So I started to use my paint to trace over all of the circles, and I was not going for perfect lines. I actually did want them to have different widths and be very like organical, maybe even shaky.
This is my life.
Once I was done painting all of the lines, it was time to round up the corners or the sharp edges, which is such a satisfying part of this technique. And it's satisfying when you do it with markers, and it still was very satisfying to do with a paintbrush. And to be honest, I thought I was going to do the circles for this painting with an acrylic marker, but just being in the hardware store inspired me to change my mind and try something different.
This is my life. Lose control. It's my soul. This is my life. This is my life.
At some point of the rounding process, I thought it would be cool for the paint to be very thick on some areas. So I poured some of the paint directly onto the canvas and I just moved it around a little bit with my brush to fit in with the rest. But when it started to dry, I thought you could tell way too much where the thicker parts were and where it was flat. So I thought it best to let it dry before deciding what to do. And by the time it was dry, it was nighttime, so I don't really have very nice footage of this, but as you can see, there's definitely too much of a difference. So here's a little bit of footage of me pouring more paint over all of the circle lines, and I did this very late at night because I didn't want to spend a whole other day for this painting to dry. So I couldn't really film. The lighting was terrible. I went to sleep, let it dry overnight, and here it is the day after. The black is not as different as I wanted it to be, but I do really love, you can actually tell that the black paint is somehow thicker. Here is all done, finished, and in a mock-up. And of course, as I offered, here's me putting it up on an actual wall for you to see. If you loved any of these 3 paintings and you want one of them in one of your walls, I am going to put all of them up for sale on my website. I'll link it below so you can buy them. And I'm also going to probably make prints available for all 3. They'll be up on my website and also on my Saatchi Art profile. And that's it. I truly hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider subscribing. And yeah, with that, I'll leave you and I'll see you next time. I hope you're having the most wonderful day. Bye!